Hello, everyone. Again, it is Leah Love. Thank you for tuning in. Um, I guess this is somewhat more of a rant, so to speak, but I hope it doesn't come off as a rant. Um, to be honest, in so many ways, I feel completely duped. And the reason why I feel duped is not that I feel that, I'm a victim, but it's that I realize that so many of the ideologies that I followed through college into my 20s and 30s never really served me. And it's definitely not going to serve my children. And the reason why I feel duped is because I realize that the moment that I became radicalized was in college. And it wasn't during high school, although I realize and see now that even high school students are being radicalized by the public school education and the slant of the ideologies of the teachers. Because I've met high school students that are just completely just like, bless their hearts, like they are on this battle mission and everything is a problem. But I personally, having taken the opportunity to open my mind to watch videos that I would have never watched during my, pro left phase, to watch right or conservative or just in the middle liberal views, it has been such an eye opener because I realize that everything is built on emotionalism, but not on facts. And what really opened my eyes is not only watching Candace Owen videos or the Rubin Report or Douglas Murray, Thomas Sowell, but I realized that it's so important to understand how our ideology and the thoughts that we are thinking affect our entire lives. So if you are thinking that you, as a certain demographic, are being targeted, you're going to have a certain behavior when you interact with the people who you think are targeting you. And then because you come with a certain attitude and aura and behavior, you get what you got, in other words. And I happened to watch a video last night with Mr. Rubin, and he was on a campus in New Hampshire. And he was very clear at the outset of the video that he was centrist, basically, but that he just wanted to open the dialogue between the left and the right. If we can't open a dialogue, we can't get anywhere in terms of clearing the space and understanding each other. So he opened it with that. He was not inflammatory at all. He is a gay, male. And yet, throughout the speech that he was giving, he had random orchestrated vigilante Nazi left people standing up and disrupting the entire talk. And it's so interesting because when the left says that nobody listens to them, their voices are being stunted, that, they just got to fight for their rights as if it's the civil rights era, as if they are actually dealing with what people dealt with, what my actual family member dealt with in segregation era. And they're out here completely emotional, very childish, They would pummel questions at him. And then when he would attempt to answer those questions from a very logical and, you know, point of view, they would interrupt him and ask a second question, interrupt him, ask a third question, and then they would hit him with, well, you're not answering any of our questions. And it was the most childish thing that I've ever seen. And yet it was from college students. One person stood up with a bunch of pennies, or I don't know what was in her glass jar, and she would just shake it. And he would offer her the mic and say, hey, clearly you have a problem. Let's talk about it. You know, whoever was out in the audience, give her the mic. And they would refuse to engage in conversation. They would just roll their necks and roll their eyes at him and just stand there. And as a parent with college age children, I looked at that, and though I'd heard from the different, YouTube posts that I've listened to lately, that, you need to be very aware of where you're sending your children when they go to college. I was shocked by the reality of it, because $20,000 per year is spent on these kids standing here who cannot debate a point whatsoever. They're just standing up here, chanting slogans, but literally can't debate. And they think that they are reenacting the 60s. But these are hyper privileged children. I don't even care if you come from the hood. If you've got a flat screen and you've got Jordan shoes and you've got a cell phone, you are privileged compared to the people that I saw when I used to live in West Africa for years. Like, you're privileged. And that's the thing that a lot of American youths, even in the hoods or whatnot, don't realize how privileged they are. And especially if you want to compare them to their ancestors who they're constantly yelling about, who were mistreated 80 years ago, who all they wanted to do is read. All they wanted to do is learn to write. But then now you've got their future generations out here acting a fool in college, not getting an education, angry about everything, and not able to get out here and produce results for the community. Protesting and carrying on, which I did in my college days, which I did in my 20s, is not going to get you the results. And I'm looking at these young 20-year-olds, and in fact, it was one, this was in New Hampshire, and it was a Caucasian woman and a Caucasian male who stood up in the middle of his very calm, non-incendiary discussion before they got to the main question and answer. And these two Caucasians stand up and talk about Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, and they look like robots. And I was personally offended as an actual Black person, not a privileged little white kid in a college who's standing up and talking about Black Lives Matter, when they've been privileged all of their life, if they want to go by their definitions of what privilege is. Just by virtue of having white skin, per them, they're privileged. And me, who wants to hear both sides of the party, they are, hindering freedom of speech by Mr. Rubin, who wanted to just bring the two sides together and let's have a conversation. And they're over here as privileged little, Caucasian white kids talking about Black Lives Matter. But they've never been through that. And they've never even really, investigated what's going on here, the full dynamics. But white guilt, leftist shaming has a lot of people doing things that they hope to win some level of high consciousness. They hope to gain that, but yet they're not making matters better. They're making matters worse, because the children who were on the left, who were standing up at supposedly timed intervals to interrupt his speech, and who were, coming up angry at the mic, screaming at him and yelling at him, nobody on the right stood up screaming and yelling, lynching people. It was only the kids on the left, the far left, that were acting so immature and so ridiculous. And I can't believe that parents are sending their children to college where they're supposed to be learning, and they're, you know, pushing out, you know, bots. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, like one woman came up and she was like, the guy who's handling the mic in the audience, he's walking around seeing who wants to say something. So he sees her. We've seen it on Oprah, we've seen it on Ellen, we've seen it on Wendy Williams. The person who's moderating the mic holds the mic. And it was crazy that this young woman walks up and she wants to say her piece. The guy's holding the mic to her mouth. Oh, so you've got to hold the mic? Oh, I see. So, you know, this is a so called free speech place, but yet you've got to hold the mic. And they're like, I mean, can we just get the question? You walked up ready for war. Then she's like, oh, because I'm a woman, you know, I can't hold the mic. So I guess this is just a pain. And she just went off all about holding the mic to her so that she could speak. But she's already fighting. She's already mad. She's already pissed that he's holding the mic. And that's a form of control because she's Miss Hyper Feminist. She's Miss Fourth Wave Feminist. And she spent the entire time antagonistic, fighting against this guy, asking him questions, but then wouldn't let him answer, claiming she was a victim, then afterwards saying, I never said I was a victim. Then when he asked her to tell her victim story, she said, I'm not going to tell you unless you pay me. Then when he offered her money, she wouldn't tell her story. And so I'm just kind of like, you know what? I saw, it was like a flashback to like 20 years ago, which wasn't that bad, but it was a horrible, horrible instance of, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't turn off my notifications. It was just a horrible, I felt like vomiting because I realized that while I was getting my liberal arts education in the university, just how my frame of reference was changed in my mind. And the reason why I'm talking about this is that because of that education that I got, where I became weaponized as a Black woman in the 90s, that it colored the next 20 years of my life. It affected the choices and the people I dated, the people I married, and it was awful. And I want so much more for our young girls. Like, they don't even know, you know, how brainwashed they are. They don't even know how much they are being played, how much they are just being used, and their energy is being used as part of the system. Like, they don't even know. I'm sorry, you guys, I had to turn off notifications because I really was just came on here random. But I'm just like, when you really think about it, and when in fact you cannot even listen to the other side and decide whether they're right or wrong, and so many proponents of the leftists are all into the law of attraction and spirituality and all of that. But if you think about it, you know, your ability to attract the best in your life has to come from an ability of openness, ability to, you know, really see all sides and choose the best path for you. And yes, I've been under a rock because I don't like to watch, you know, popular news because I think it's just BS. And I've thought that for like the last 15 years. So I don't stay up to date on current news. Although if I have to find something out, I will go and research online, like statistics and, you know, numbers to bolster, you know, my ability to have a conversation with someone. But at the end of the day, I'm just thinking to myself, I don't want to send my girls to college. And I never thought that before, but I'm like, if I'm going to spend all of this time homeschooling my girls, instilling our home values, and as I solidify my values and my standards and what I want for my children, what I want for my grandchildren, not just to live off the seat of my pants, not just to live off government, not just to be a perpetual underclass, and then blame everybody else for the fact that I'm the underclass, but yet I won't even open my ears to see that, like they say, the Democratic plantation, that basically I'm just still a slave, not living through thinking things out, but just out here knee jerk emotionalism. And I think that's what hit me the most when I watched that video of his debate in New Hampshire, is that the sheer emotionalism of the left. Like, they came up already hyped, like ready to punch it out, ready to fight. And then the people who were more leaning towards conservative and right, they wanted to talk about real issues. They didn't just want to come up on stage and vomit their emotionalism, but they wanted to actually get answers to things, ask pointed questions that would allow them to think about how to go about solutions for the divisions in this country. But all I saw from the left and the college students was just pure emotional childishness. And even when, another set of two people stood up and chanted something else, and he says, okay, thank you for your chant, and they wouldn't listen to him. They just kept chanting and chanting and chanting, hoping to disrupt when they're talking about free speech and how, their free speech has been hampered by police brutality and by all of this. But then when they get to a rally, they cut off everybody else's speech because you don't deserve to have speech. Only them, and only when their speech they feel is hampered, then it's a problem of free speech. But otherwise, they get to show up anywhere, anytime, and act a fool and act very immature. And then when he asked them, can you stop chanting the slogan and actually ask me a question? Do you have a question? And then they would just, roll their eyes at him and do all of this stuff. But they had zero questions. They had zero questions for him other than rants. And I just thought, like, it was so life-changing for me, because I thought, oh my God, like, we weren't even that bad in the 90s when I was in college and protesting. But this is like a whole nother level, because I haven't been on a college campus since I left it in 20 years. So I literally did not know all of this was going on, and that these kids who are, supposedly hyper militant left, whatever they call themselves, like, they're not even able to debate. They're not even able to stand there, ask a question, be quiet, and listen to the answer. They're just out there screaming and acting crazy. And let me guess, they got a scholarship. So who's paying for that scholarship? And now that I look at it, like, I didn't know that that was going on, but I do know that I do not want my children becoming bots, becoming robots and energy sources for some other scheme that's going on. I would be humiliated if my daughters were out in college acting a straight fool at every single rally, calling in bomb threats, just because they cannot hear the other side. And especially, it's both sides. Whatever the race is, it's like, it doesn't even matter. I was going to say, especially young white, children who've not even experienced what I experienced growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, talking, speaking for me and on my behalf, when I did not ask them to, because they have no idea. I'm not going to say they were privileged, because I don't know their background, but if I go by their philosophy, they're supposedly privileged just to be white, and they're fighting for Black Lives Matter, and they're just doing their part because they just need a cause. They just need something to be by proxy victim. And I don't appreciate that, because I didn't ask them. I didn't ask them to stand up and talk for me. And the audacity to think that they are going to talk for me on my benefit when they didn't live through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I did not live through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And for them to be here in 2019 talking about their oppression, I'm sorry, that doesn't fly with me. It doesn't fly with me at all. And in fact, it pisses me off. And I'm appalled. I'm livid, actually. And I think when you want to bring emotions into a debate, it should be over, you know, a righteous cause. It should be over something that's based on substance, and not just because your life is meaningless and because you just don't have any cause or any ability to claim victimhood, that you appropriate a victimhood, which I don't even want. I don't want my children to grow up being victims. I'm not raising them that way. I don't take on that cause. And when you do become a victim, you tend to act in certain ways, which attracts reasons for you to be a victim. And I, I don't know. I'm gonna show this video to my husband because I'm just like, if we send these girls off to college and people are not paying attention to the education that these professors, so-called education that they're giving to students in this day and age, you're gonna get a child who's gonna get out here, make all kinds of life mistakes that they're gonna regret 20 years later. Because I don't care what you say, I've been 20, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I've been through all of that, and I'm now 47. And I'm able to look back and realize the mistakes I made at 20 and 21. I'm reading more and more texts and more comments on videos that I watch just to hear both sides of the story, just to be open-minded. And I'm listening to so many women who are talking about, now they're in their late 50s, and they follow the hyper feminist, Gloria Steinem-esque mess. And now, they're in their 50s, never had children, never got married, and they're realizing that they got played. They spent their whole life angry. Everybody was a problem. They were looking for a problem under every rock. They were combative. They didn't understand, somebody's just trying to be nice by opening the door for you. And all of a sudden, that's a political statement, and you've got to start ranting and carrying on with some man. All men are evil. This whole party line. But it's funny that the people who are pushing this party line, a lot of times they're married. They're living the American dream. But they've got the rank and file buying into this BS of fourth wave feminism or pro Black Lives Matter and all of this mess out here. And they're not able to live their lives because they're following this ideology, which the heads of these different organizations are not even victims of necessarily. And, before people start coming for me, like I said, I wasted my college years in my 20s being so-called pro-Black activists. I wasted my time marrying no good pro-Black, being with no good pro-Black men who didn't believe in raising a family, who didn't believe in taking care of a family, who didn't believe in, being a man, because they were so busy being a victim. Fortunately, I got out of that, married well, and I'm good now. But I'm saying so many Black women have fallen victim to this ideology of coddling, whining, wimping, Black men who just got this long story, or Black women who are being, derelict and just doing whatever, like I saw these kids doing in this video, and acting out just because they claim they've got the Black card, which I don't even know what it's worth at this point. What is it worth? And I'm over it, and I'm so appalled, and I'm so glad that I was able to educate myself as to what's going on these college campuses. And mind you, I spent years when I was in college studying the likes of Marcus Garvey, the likes of men, Frederick Douglass, or, it's so many leaders back in the day who, were about our empowerment through education, through work, through ethics, through standards, through a positive culture, that they would even be rolling over in their graves to look at the generations that came after those who won the civil rights, that are out here in the streets acting a fool, and on these college campuses acting a fool. And I can't do it, to be honest. I really can't do it. And I'm appalled and ashamed, but at the same time, those are not my kids. So, but at the end of the day, I can't be like that. I can say that to be funny, but at the end of the day, you know, we all have to be accountable, because at the end of the day, we're going to grow up. We're no longer going to be 19 and ridiculous and out here screaming stuff that we don't even know about, who we, as 19, 18-year-olds who never experienced Jim Crow, who never experienced slavery, who never experienced what, you know, the creators of Tuskegee, of all of these institutes, Marcus Garvey, what all of they went through. I refuse to listen to some, privileged kid who never went through slavery themselves talk to me and rant and rave and carry on and scream with their bad behavior. Because even those who came out of slavery, even those who were in Jim Crow systems, they would never publicly act like they acted. And they did not advocate that. So if you want to talk about, ancestry and slavery and all of that and heritage, our people never acted like this, even in the face of much worse. Because while you're on your iPhone and your little $800 tablet or whatever, coordinating your little, disruption thing, these people never had that. And they were much more well behaved, and they were much more respectable than these little brats out here in college acting out like there's just like life is just so hard for you. No, it's not, honey. It is absolutely not. And I'm beyond. Yes, I'm emotional, but I'm beyond. And I'm at this point where I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in the American goal, entrepreneurial goal, even when I lived in West Africa. Because, excuse me, a lot of you guys who are pro-Black, pro this, that, and the other, never even been out of the country. I lived in West Africa for 4 years. And the stuff I saw, from not even having food stamps, not having Medicaid and Medicare, not having welfare, and the lives they lived. And you're over here with all of your benefits, and you still got your iPhone, you still got your flat screen TVs, you still got your Jordans, you still got all of this stuff, but you want to claim that you're so oppressed. When I saw babies dying from malaria, I saw fathers of families who were actually with their families, excuse me, when it's not the Black American culture at this point for a Black father to be with his family. But they were trying to raise their children. They caught malaria and died at 38. I saw that with my own eyes. A good friend of mine, because I lived there for 4 years. I don't want to hear it. All your ranting and raving about you're just so oppressed. You're absolutely not. You're not oppressed. And you can tweet it and all of that on your $800 phone. You're not oppressed. And I'm so ashamed and so appalled. And I don't think I'm going to send my kids to these colleges. I'm just not. Not if they got to sit up here and live with and roommate with you guys, ruining everything that I've done for them and the values that I've instilled in them, keeping them homeschooled, doing everything I can, and then they get with you little so-called underprivileged, privileged kids with black skin, brown skin, claiming all this mess. Absolutely not. I'm done. Oh my God, it's crazy how I've had to just like go to another level and go all the way to the other spectrum because I'm so ashamed. And all of our people have done so much for us, and we're out here acting a damn fool. For what? And what did you gain from it? Because once you go out of college with your student loans and your debts, what job are you going to get? Angry at everybody. But I bet you're going to go in corporate America and work for the same guy that you hate. What are you going to do with this degree? Why are you in college? I hope you can become an entrepreneur, get your money, live your life, and maybe raise some children who are respectful and have some manners and some decency, like our ancestors that you're constantly talking about. Our ancestors had decency and manners and decorum. The first millionaire in America, female, it was Madam C.J. Walker. Do you think Madam C.J. Walker would be out here acting like these kids in college? Just screaming and carrying on, hair all kind of ways. Like, are you serious? Sorry, not sorry. All of these people that you talk about that are such great black heroes and all of that, they would never act like these little kids, these college kids these days. Never. And they never would have gotten where they got if they had these kids' attitudes. And so that's why I'm like, I'm so glad that seasoning and age got me to the point where I can at least listen to both arguments and make up my own mind and actually be free. Because a lot of these kids think they're free, but they're actually still slaves. They're still slaves of ideology, and they still have you acting a fool and being a complete ass out in public and so-called representing the black community. I didn't ask you to represent me. I didn't ask that at all. And to be honest, the way you're acting, I don't know what kind of level of education you have, even though you're so-called in college, but you can't do much for me. You cannot do much for me, honey, because I'm just done. And it's sad because at the end of the day, they will wake up when they're 40 and they're on Medicaid, diabetes, and got some problems and mental health problems and everything else. They're going to think back onto their productive years and wonder what the hell happened. Why did they waste their time? And where were these liberals and Democrats when it came time to pay the rent, when it came time to, establish a life for themselves? They're going to wonder that. All of these people who were screaming Black Lives Matter, these, liberal white kids, in New Hampshire or whatever, they're going to be wondering where those kids are. And a lot of times what I found when I was in high school, they had their little rebellion stage, but guess what? They went on with their life and they're now on Wall Street. While a lot of the other kids in my, pro-black groups and all of that are now full adults and all of that, they're struggling. Can't even pay the rent. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to be real careful with these people you follow and with these ideologies that you're signing up for and giving all of your youthful energy to. Who's paying you for that? And who's going to pay you for that 20 years from now when you're on the losing end of the stick and the Clintons got millions? Oh, no answers. So anyway, I'm just, oh my God, I'm so done. I got to go pick up my kids from their little swim and gym class. So you guys, please stop. Please think. Please open your mind and keep it real, because this is a hot mess out here. And be very careful for the people in my age group who have children who will be entering into college. Start looking into your colleges, look into their activities, look into their so-called activist stuff, and look at what they're doing. And do you really want your children going there and being influenced by this group who is trashing their lives? To be honest, because like I said, been there, done that. You can't tell me anything about anything, especially if you're going to be claiming Black Lives Matters, but you've never even been to Africa. You've never even been to the origins of Black lives. I'm sorry. I'm not buying it. Y'all can be in your little fairy tale land, but I'm not buying it.